Hey folks, we are here for the live lecture review for week 13. And I just want to say for people who are just watching this review that's recorded, we have a set of students who are coming to the lecture reviews every week, and it's very helpful for them. So if you're able to make it, I know there's actually going to only be one live lecture review again this semester because next week is Thanksgiving and we're not having a live lecture review next week. 2 weeks from today is the last Thursday of the semester. That live lecture review from 10 to 11 will essentially be the review session for your final exam. So if you come to that live lecture review 10 to 11, 2 weeks from today, you can ask me any questions on any of the review questions that are relevant to the final exam material. This is also where people are coming to ask me questions about when things are going to be graded. There was a question about when our exam 3 is going to be graded. I'm working on that. You should have those grades posted in the next couple of days. I'm also working on grading all the other things that you've been submitting recently. It just takes me a while to get through and make comments if I need to make comments on people's works. It's more time consuming to do it electronically. But the lecture materials that you have submitted for assignments, like when you did the human population growth assignment, that was a 6-point assignment. If you did that and made a good effort at that, you're going to get those 6 points. Likewise, for the animal behavior questions, the trials of life questions that you submitted, you'll get those points as long as you answered those questions. And it's obvious to me that you watched the videos and you used the videos to answer the questions. That doesn't mean that necessarily you got the correct answers for those questions. So we're going to go through that today. We're going to talk about the animal behavior questions and the trials of life. And I'm going to make sure that you have the correct answers so that you can use those to study for the final exam. Basically, this review is about making sure you all have the tools that you need to study those review questions to do well on the exams. So I hope you'll join us and I hope you're watching this. I'm going to bring up my chat because I can't really see it right now, that the people who are here with me can chime in either by unmuting yourselves or typing something into chat. I have posted some lectures for this week. I posted a lecture on anatomy and physiology that went into respiration. I posted a lecture on circulation as well. So now we are through respiration and circulation. I also have lectures on the nervous system as well as the reproductive system that I had some recording difficulties Tuesday and Wednesday, but I got the thing to work. So I'm going to get those recorded and posted. All of these lectures together make up your lecture material for this week and next week. So when I get all those posted, hopefully in the next couple of days, you'll have all the lecture material for next week as well. Next week is Thanksgiving week. We're not going to have any live Zoom sessions next week. Your lab is it's designed as a take-home lab. I'll post a little tutorial video about that. But since we're not meeting live next week, I want to make sure you have all your materials. And then coming back from Thanksgiving, one more week of class. The lectures are going to be on conservation biology, and we'll do that wrap up, and that'll be your review, and then we go into finals. Okay. Any questions about that from the people who are here before I go into our animal behavior? Animal behavior lecture. I have the slides, but I'm going to go straight to these review questions. I hope you guys got to watch those spider videos. Oh my gosh. I know, I'm obsessed with spiders, but they were pretty amazing, right? Those jumping spiders. Did you watch those? Pretty awesome little guys. Yes. Beautiful. Most spiders have terrible vision, but jumping spiders have good vision. So these males can have brilliant colors and dances, and they make noise. They're like drum majors and drummers at the same time. That's how I think of it. Oh yeah, I know. And then he gets eaten in the end. Oh, spoiler alert. Yes, that was a sad ending for that male, but it was a very typical ending in these situations in nature. So do we understand, we know the difference between animal behavior and behavioral ecology. animal behavior just being everything that animals do and how they do it, but behavioral ecology being the study of that animal behavior in an evolutionary context. So we're looking at essentially, why do animals do what they do? How does it help them survive or reproduce? That would be what behavioral ecology addresses. Agonistic behaviors were these aggressive behaviors, or even just assessment behaviors that are targeted at other individuals in your species that are used to settle disputes over a resource of some sort. So if there are conflicts within a species, there are certain types of behaviors that can be used to settle those. In humans, I give an example sometimes of arm wrestling as a typical maybe agonistic behavior. Even rock, paper, scissors could be something that would be useful to help you think about this in humans. If we're trying to settle a dispute, we try to come up with ways to settle that dispute that don't have us injured or dying at the end of it, right? That are not going to get us hurt. Okay, any questions about the mating systems? Types of animal signals. These were all pretty straightforward in the lecture. The functions of courtship displays, types of resources. And I think to answer some of these questions, I'm going to go straight to these trials of life video questions and go through those with you to make sure we got those correct. Do you all have that with you? Or you can bring it up somewhere? Again, I have not given you your grade for this. What will probably happen in Canvas is I'll give the grade and I might make a comment that says, make sure you look at the correct answers from the lecture review. So I don't have to write the correct answers in every time for each student. Here are the correct answers for you all to study. What mating system did jacanas have? That was when a single female mates with multiple males. So that's a polyandrous mating system. Polyandrous system or polyandry was that mating system. And then the female destroyed the eggs that were on a male's territory. Why did she destroy that male's eggs?
Isn't it because she feels like almost threatened by him? And I remember the narrator was also saying that she destroyed the eggs because they're not like hers, like it's not her offspring. And isn't that like kind of one of the main goals of like the animal kingdom, you know, like passing off like your traits and like by having offspring, right? And that encourages the male to mate with her when she does that.
Exactly. It's all about her fitness, right? Her fitness is passing on genes to the next generation. So to pass on her genes, she needs to destroy those eggs that he is watching that are not her eggs and replace those eggs with her own eggs to increase her fitness. So the answer there, yes, is to replace the eggs with her own eggs. And that's so she will pass on her genes. And she wants that male as a resource too, and that territory as a resource. She's taking over the territory. And as long as he's guarding another female's eggs, he's not going to be available to mate with her and to protect the eggs that she lays. So she needs that resource, so she's going to destroy her rival's eggs. Pretty gruesome. Then we moved on to the spear-nosed bats. And the spear-nosed bats were what kind of mating system? Then this one was a little bit confusing because David Attenborough would say, I think said polygamous. And polygamous is a term that is used to refer to any kind of arrangement where you have a single individual of one sex pairing up with multiple individuals. This one particularly from lecture though, if a male is pairing up with multiple females, that is polygyny. And to make it clear, I sometimes say polygyny because that helps me understand how that word is going to be spelled, right? Polygynous or polygynous, which means multiple females, that root word gyne referring to females. They have a polygynous mating system. And not too much more about that one, but what type of mating system did that royal albatross have? I mean, who did not fall in love with royal albatross during this video clip? Are they not the most amazing things with their little click, 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 and they're dancing and they're communicating and they're kind of nuzzling each other? So that was a monogamous relationship, and it's actually really rare for animals to have a monogamous relationship that lasts for their entire life. So these royal albatross are really exceptional in that extent. Most birds that are monogamous, they might be monogamous for a single mating season and then move on. Really interesting point about these albatross. I love the comments in the chat that they are so sweet. They have dance parties. They're so cute. They bond together. But there was a study that was done on an albatross population. It was not in New Zealand. I think this was one in Hawaii. It was either New Zealand or Hawaii. And when they studied, you can't tell if a bird is male or female in a lot of species. If they don't have sexual dimorphism, you can't tell if they're male or female just by looking at any of their external structures. So you have to do genetic analysis to tell if birds are male or females in some cases. Where some scientists did a study at an albatross colony, and they collected blood from every single bird in the colony and analyzed it, looked at the chromosomes. And they determined that a large number of the pairings of birds in the nests and as partners were female and female pairings. So that was really surprising, but it really made sense as well evolutionarily that if you're a female in a population and you need a partner in order for your young to survive, because this is why they need a partner, right? They have to have this monogamous relationship, because their young require a lot of parental care. So they need care from two parents in order to survive. One parent's going to protect them at the nest, while the other parent is going out and getting food and bringing food back to feed the young. If you're a female and you show up and there are no males available to partner up with, that could mean, okay, you don't have any offspring that season, or you're not going to reproduce. Or you could partner up with another female that's available. All you have to do is get sperm, which is not that challenging for a male to donate the sperm. So you can go and mate with a male that's already in another partnership, get his sperm. Ends up being a pretty good deal for him because he's passing on his genes. And then you and your female partner can rear that offspring together. And then if you do that where one female lays an egg one time and then another female, the other female in the partnership, lays the egg the next time, both of those females end up getting reproductive fitness as well. Yeah. So when you look closely at nature, you see things that are unexpected, and it's really important to keep your ideas open to different shifts in paradigms about what's going on. So the royal albatross requires this mating arrangement because the young require a large amount of parental care. From both parents. And this is also true in humans, right? We have what are called altricial young, which means they are not able to take care of themselves in any way when they're first born. They need to be protected, they need help moving, they need help eating, and so forth. So because of that, we have relationships that are more pair bonded relationships, because that's a commitment from multiple individuals to that one offspring who's going to need care from multiple individuals in order to survive. And it doesn't always take the form of one male, one female. Sometimes it's aunts, uncles, grandparents, two women, two men, all different kinds of arrangements that can be useful in helping a child survive. But you're going to need commitment from more than one person in order for that offspring to have a good chance. Okay, so stalk-eyed flies. How did they assess their rival strengths? They measured the distance of a part of their eyes, right? So they had their eyes on stalks. How far apart are the eyes? That's going to be an indicator of the size of the individual, and that's going to help them assess. And most of these fighting videos were about assessment. I want you to keep that in mind with respect to aggression and fighting. The first step is sizing up your rival. It's assessing your rival, because you do not want to start in with your most dangerous weapons. What happens if you start in using your most dangerous weapons? What is going to happen?
You can ultimately harm the person or like the individual that you're fighting, and you might even like harm yourself. Like the animal might harm itself in the process. And if it harms itself or like gets injured, that's not beneficial to either of them, because then they can't survive and they might even die. So that's why they have to do the assessment to check like, is it even worth it to fight for like the resource that they're like trying to get?
Yes, completely. That is right. They are going to not want to risk getting injured and even potentially dying. And what's interesting about this is sometimes even the individual that wins a fight dies at the end, right? You could get injured and end up dying later from a fight that you won. So animals do not want to fight. It's not in their best interest. Evolution should have selected for behaviors that are going to make them cautious in these situations. The example of the rattlesnake that I use, these rattlesnakes are going to assess each other's strength by pushing against each other. If one of them bites the other, well, that one's going to potentially die, the one that's bitten, but of course it might be bitten itself because the other individual is going to fight back. So, if at all possible, avoid actual combat. That is the general rule. But in order to determine who gets the resource, size each other up. I mentioned arm wrestling. That's something that humans do to kind of indicate who would be stronger and who would win a resource potentially. Or even the little shoving matches that we sometimes have that are not full blown punching each other or using weapons, but are meant to kind of assess relative strength. So the mud crabs had the size of their claw, right? And what was the resource that the mud crabs were fighting over? You guys remember that one? This goes back to the value of the resources. How valuable is this resource for reproduction and for survival? So they were fighting over the burrows in which they lived, right? And these burrows are going to provide a habitat for them. They'll also be fighting over sometimes mating territories or over access to females. And that's what these ibex were fighting for. So when you got to the video with the ibex with the really big horns, and they're on these steep, rocky slopes, which is really challenging terrain, they actually got into a violent fight that could have resulted in death. And they were fighting over territories, right? And in this species, the territory gave them access to females. Because if the male was in control of a certain territory, then he had access to all the females in that territory. And we've already answered this one. Why do most animal contests never escalate to full combat? Animals do not want to risk injury or death for themselves. And as much as we might like to think it's about protecting the other person, it's really about self-preservation, in that if you start fighting somebody, then you're likely to get injured or die as well. And that is no good for your fitness. Okay, combat between a large male and a small male, or two males of the same size. Which is more likely?
Same size.
Definitely the same size, right? You're not likely to see combat between a small and a large male, because the smaller male in this case should, upon the assessment, say, okay, I'm clearly outmatched here. I'm going to back away and just give up this. I don't want to get injured. I don't want to die. If the males are the same size, Why might they fight?
Because they know that they're equally matched. And for example, if they're fighting for like territory or like a female, like they know, okay, since I'm the same size as them, it's like more worth it to fight because there's not like someone who's a bigger size and they know that they're gonna lose. So that's why they like take that chance to
Right. They think
fight.
that they have a chance of winning it, right? Yeah. So it's about the chance. You're not going to take a chance that's likely to end in a loss and potential harm to you, but you might take a chance if you think that you have a good shot at winning. So if they're the same size, maybe nobody's going to back down. The resources, the ones that I graded so far, you guys did great with this. Just don't put resources, although some people say resources. So it's food, right? It's food, it's territory, it's mates, it's water, it's nesting sites, those types of things. Those are the resources that animals might fight over. Did you watch the gazelles? If you were able to watch the video of the gazelles at the end, it's very lovely. They look so graceful. They actually look like they might be mating with each other or courting each other, but they are actually displaying agonistic behaviors. They are sizing each other up. Very civilized. Okay, well, good. I think we covered all that. Does anybody have any questions from our Trials of Life videos? Let's move on. I know we have a question from Anatomy and Physiology, and I'll just bring up the review questions for this week and next week. Maybe some of you have gotten through one or two, some of part or all of this first lecture. Olivia, I know you had a question. What was your question from this week?
Yeah, so I filled out the whole first section, but for the vocabulary at the top for like specific function, organ system, and organism, I didn't see like on the first lecture video like definitions. Like I mean I understand what it is, I just didn't see like a specific definition to write down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Let me just make a copy of this and I'll write some stuff in here. Yeah, I didn't write those down. It was mostly just to save some time at that point. So this is a great place to go over that. An organ, it's basically building, we talked about those nested dolls from the beginning of the semester. A tissue is a group of cells that work together in an integrated fashion. They work together to carry out a specific function. So an organ is a group of tissues that work together to carry out a specific function. Okay. Such as pumping blood, the function of the heart. And then an organ system is, guess what? This is a group of organs. And not just organs, but other anatomical structures as well in this case, because for example, the circulatory system, it definitely has the heart as an organ, but then all these blood vessels as well, which we might refer to as organs, but they're just really anatomical structures, group of organs and structures that works together to carry out a specific function, in that case, circulating blood. So that's kind of how it builds on it like that. It's sort of like the same definition, but an organ is a group of tissues, an organ system is a group of organs, an organism is made up of all of those different organ systems working together to carry out that overall functioning of the organism.
Okay, thank you. So what sorry, can you repeat that for organism?
So for the organism, it would be all the organ systems. all of those systems An organism is very briefly just defined as an individual living thing, right? So every individual is an organism, and that would be in the context of anatomy, that would mean all of those organ systems working together. So integumentary, respiratory, circulatory, digestive, excretory, and so forth. Your organism requires all of those systems to be functioning and working in a coordinated fashion so that all of your needs are met. Regarding those organ systems, many of them are really straightforward, and there is an assignment that is in the form of a quiz. It's an open note quiz, and you can take it as many times as you want. So I fully expect everybody to get 6 out of 6 points on that one. And that's just to help you to match up the organ systems with their functions. So you can use that to study for your final exam as well. Many of these will be familiar to you, I believe. For example, the digestive system, the muscular system, the nervous system. A couple that I think are challenging, integumentary system. Do you all remember what the integumentary system is? It's only challenging because of the name. The name is not something that you may have heard before. But the integumentary system in one word is think of it as your skin, right? It's holding things in. That might be a good way to think about it. The integumentary system kind of encloses everything of our body. That's our skin. And it protects us from invasion, from external pathogens, for example. We have this protective layer of our skin. It protects us from damage. It protects us from drying out, which is really important, that we have this waterproof barrier that water is not going to be able to easily escape our bodies. We are not like earthworms in that respect, where we have a skin across which water can dissolve. So integumentary systems of skin, and the other one that people have a tough time with is the endocrine system. That refers to our endocrine glands that release hormones. Those hormones that circulate in our bodies are signaling molecules that need to be sometimes upregulated or downregulated depending on the conditions we're experiencing. So the endocrine system is a system that's responsible for releasing and regulating those hormones. If you have hormonal imbalances, you might go see an endocrinologist to get that checked out. I think those are the ones with the words that are a little less well known to us. Excretory system is about excreting waste products. So just think excretion in that context. You need to get rid of things that are not good for your body that are building up in there. Are there any other questions regarding gas exchange? Do you all understand what we mean when we say gas exchange? What are the gases? And I definitely will go over number 4 too. The gases that we're talking about, yes, are oxygen and carbon dioxide. So this whole unit, these lessons on respiration and circulation, are about gas exchange with the environment, bringing oxygen in from the air, right? And then the oxygen has to be delivered to our body cells, and then there's gas exchange between the blood and our cells. The oxygen is in our blood, it gets delivered to the cells, it gets exchanged, meaning it moves from the blood into our body cells to supply our cells with oxygen. And then the blood picks up carbon dioxide from our body's cells. That's another area of gas exchange, brings that to the lungs eventually, where that carbon dioxide is released into the air. So there are 2 points of gas exchange with the environment, which is happening with our lungs, the air that's in our lungs. There's gas exchange with the environment. And then there's gas exchange between the blood and the cells of the body that require oxygen to carry out cellular respiration. I'm just going to say it. I will probably put something on the final exam and maybe it'll be extra credit. And I'm just going to ask you why we need oxygen. Why do we need oxygen? Remind me to do that. Why do we, or maybe even better, why do we breathe? Why do we breathe? Breathing, it's this thing that we know is absolutely fundamental. And there's one reason that we need to breathe, and that is why. If you say get oxygen, I'll be like, yeah, okay, why do we need to get oxygen? So why do we need oxygen? We need oxygen for, come on, folks. Why can't we function without oxygen? Yay! Cellular respiration. Okay, cellular respiration. That's what it's all about. As important as oxygen is to us, that is why it's important, because we need it to accept those electrons in the third step of cellular respiration so that we can make ATP efficiently. That is why we breathe. Okay, all of this respiratory stuff, that's about bringing in oxygen for cellular respiration. Okay, so we know, and this is question number 4, which I just had here. What is the relationship between surface area of respiratory surface and the metabolism or energy needs of an organism? Surface area, surface area, surface area. You're seeing it in lab this week with leaf size and roots and root hairs, surface area. Surface area is going to increase the surface across which processes can occur. So the process that we're talking about right here is gas exchange. And in order to bring oxygen into our bodies, I'm going to actually go to an image because I love these images. And I really think that they're things people don't think about a lot and don't relate to a lot. So let's look at, I'm going to start with this earthworm. We're going to look at the surface area. This is the surface right here. This is the respiratory surface. And this respiratory surface is the surface across which oxygen diffuses from the air into our blood, right? At these capillaries. This is an earthworm. So into the earthworm's blood. Also at this respiratory surface, which is the skin in the case of the earthworm, that's where carbon dioxide is going to diffuse out of the blood. If you need more oxygen, meaning that you have higher energetic demands, right? You need to use more ATP, you move a lot, you do a lot of things. There was a reference to thinking and all the oxygen that your brain needs to use, right? If you need more of that, are you going to need a higher respiratory surface area? Yes, right? Absolutely. So if our skin right here were permeable to water and we could breathe across our skin, if we could get oxygen, would this be enough surface area for us to supply all of our energetic needs, get enough oxygen to make enough ATP? No, that wouldn't be enough for us. We need a lot because we are so active as these vertebrate animals who maintain a constant body temperature, and we do a lot throughout the day. That's not enough surface area for us. The way that you increase the surface area is typically by folding and branching. Folding and branching would increase the surface area. Gills are another respiratory surface. Look how folded they are. Look how branched they are. All of these extensions of the gills are increasing the surface area. And that's going to provide more oxygen for these fish so the fish can make more ATP if they can break down their food more efficiently using that oxygen, and they can do more. They can be more active. This is great. These are very highly branched. This is not good for us. I'm going to skip now to, I think I covered this one. The higher the energetic demands of the organism, the more respiratory surface area they need. But I want to go on to number 5 here, because this one is very related to this as well. Everybody with me? Any questions? It's okay to do number 5. This one people typically have a hard time with, or we have to go over it again. So let's see, back to these. I've shown you the fish, right? But the fish gills are out here. They are exposed. If a fish is out of water, what's going to happen? Its gills are going to dry out, right? And the gills dry out, and this fish cannot absorb oxygen because it's a dry respiratory surface. And as we know, respiratory surfaces have to be kept moist in order for oxygen or carbon dioxide to move across. So for vertebrates that live on land, like us and like other mammals and like birds and reptiles and so forth, they need to have respiratory surfaces that are not exposed to the air so that they won't dry out. So the way to do that is to tuck those respiratory surfaces inside your body, and that's what lungs are. Lungs are inside our body. Our body is 70% water. So the internal environment of our body is an aqueous environment, right? It's a wet environment, and that keeps these respiratory surfaces moist so that gas exchange can occur. And going along with this is the fact that because they're housed within our body and they're not going to dry out, there can be a really big surface area there, right? These bronchi, they branch into bronchioles that are ending in these open sacs called alveoli. And those alveoli are open, and all of that is respiratory surface area. So for humans, there you can see what a drawing of the pouches of the alveoli, but this is what they really look like. So you can see this is surface, surface, surface. All of that, these hollow areas here are areas in the lungs where air is brought in and has contact with that respiratory surface. So oxygen can be absorbed, can be exchanged. So does that help you with why the terrestrial vertebrates need to have their respiratory surfaces inside their bodies? Goes back to the fact that they need to be kept moist, right? So they don't dry out. And so they can have a big surface area. I mean, it's possible we could keep them moist if they were just a little surface that had exposure, but we cannot have a big surface area like this exposed to the air. It's going to dry out. So it doesn't dry out. And remember, this whole respiratory surface of these alveoli is about equivalent to the area of a racquetball court. So it's a lot of surface that we have packed in there. Okay. Any questions about anything else? Again, as always with this information, I hope you can find a way to tell a story about it and think about it so that it makes sense to you, so that you're not just memorizing information. That's going to help you for your exam. Everybody clear on the 4 things that are done to air as it is inhaled? That's a story that I hope you can tell. I hope that when we talked about that in the lecture, you were like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that every time I take a breath through my nose, I am filtering the air, I'm smelling the air and detecting what chemicals are present in it. I'm actually warming the air so it's not cold when it gets into my lungs, and I'm humidifying the air. I'm making the air moist so that this air that goes into my lungs is not going to dry out my respiratory surface in the lungs. Any other questions? I want to make a note. I'm not sure now that I'm looking at these review questions, was figure 22.10 clear in your, it might not be clear because this is a figure number that's taken from an old textbook. So I'm going to change that in the review questions, but basically the figure that it's referring to is that figure that I showed a couple of times, and I drew it too, which I just want to say, I really don't like being online and not being face to face in the classroom, but every semester I draw this thing in front of my students in class, and I get so nervous because I'm not a very comfortable artist. So I always do my drawings and I'm like, oh, I hope this is not the worst drawing ever. So this time I got to sit down and take a lot of care with my drawing. If you watch the lecture, you could see my drawing of this, which I always look at the students' drawings that they do, and they're just so much better in most cases. So it's really fun to see how students can draw. I hope you took the time to draw this diagram. This is figure 22.10. I don't think it was necessarily labeled as such in my lecture, but this is the figure that this is referring to. And this figure basically says it all. There are so many questions I could ask you from this figure. I could ask you about this blood vessel right here. Is this blood vessel that I'm pointing to, is this a vein or an artery? I have a question in the chat. Is it a vein? Vein? It is a vein. Yes, this is actually a vein. And the reason that I know it's a vein is because I look at this flow of blood. This is the blood vessel that's delivering blood from the lungs up here to the heart. And this is the left atrium of the heart. The blood is collecting there. Any blood vessel that carries blood to the heart is a vein. And that's a question that might throw people off because you can see that this is oxygen-rich blood. And we're accustomed to thinking that veins carry oxygen-poor blood and arteries carry oxygen-rich blood. But actually, veins and arteries are defined by the direction in which they're carrying blood. Are they going to the heart or are they going away from the heart? And the blood going to the heart in veins. Now, granted, this is an exceptional vein. This is the pulmonary vein from the lung to the heart. Most of our veins are going from body tissues to the heart, but mostly they are carrying oxygen poor blood, but not always. So what kind of blood vessel is this? This is an artery, right? Because this is carrying blood away from the heart. Good. And a blood vessel like this, an artery, does it have thin walls, thick walls, or kind of in between walls? Do you think the walls of an artery are going to be thin, thick, or a moderate level of thickness? They have thick walls. Yes, arteries have really thick walls. And that is because there's high pressure in the blood as it has just been pumped from this ventricle. The ventricle is a big chamber. The left ventricle here is the biggest chamber in the heart. It's got to have a lot of force with that pumping to send the blood out in the aorta and the arch of the aorta, and then into all these arteries that are going to be traveling to the brain, out to the fingertips, down to the toes, and all over to the livers, to the organs, to supply oxygen to the various parts of the body. So arteries have very, very thick walls. Veins have thinner walls, but not the thinnest walls. Capillaries, right down here are the capillaries. This is where gas exchange actually occurs in these very thin-walled, thin diameter blood vessels that are called capillaries. So up here in this diagram, you have the capillaries in the lung, and those capillaries are basically right like this against the alveoli, and gas exchange is taking place there. And then you have the capillaries that are where the body cells are in the various parts of the body, and they are going to be dropping off oxygen. The blood is dropping off oxygen and picking up carbon dioxide. So this diagram, there's so much going on here. So much to understand. It really says a lot. And always keep in mind, I know I mentioned it in lecture, but it bears repeating. When you are looking at a diagram, an anatomical diagram like this, the individual pictured is facing you, right? So this side is the left side of their body. Don't base it on your side as you're looking at it, but the side of the body in the diagram. This is the left side of their body. Left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle. Okay. And that stuff was posted pretty pretty recently. So I think I posted that yesterday afternoon. So I understand if you haven't had a chance to look at that. Are there any other questions that you all want me to go over right now? So these I see here with these review questions, and this is, I'm sorry, it's an artifact from having used images from a different textbook that were actually really good images that I wanted to hold on to. This question number 3 here says, use your notes to review how blood flows 23B. This diagram and 23B. I'm not sure what 23B, it might have been this one, but just look at the diagrams that are in the lecture to review this flow of blood. And I want to mention one other thing, and that is that when we talked about the capillaries being very, very thin walled, the reason they have to have such thin walls is because diffusion occurs across the capillaries. Again, this is where gas exchange is taking place. So diffusion of nutrients and oxygen out of the blood's in here in the capillaries. It goes into the fluid surrounding the cells, and then it goes into the cells themselves. So if the cells need more oxygen, they can get more oxygen, they can get the nutrients that result from absorption from our digestive system. And then waste products such as carbon dioxide or metabolic waste products that come from processing our food, those would then diffuse into the bloodstream here. So you can see, I love this image. It really shows you what a capillary looks like going through tissues. This is going through muscle tissues. You can see all these cells, these individual cells, and the capillary is just going right through those cells, and diffusion will just take place across the surface of the capillary to supply the cells with oxygen and to pick up excess carbon dioxide. Okay. And we have a question, I have a question in the chat that is, can we return our books now? So is this a book that you have rented? Is that, or you mean like to sell, if you got a hard copy of the OpenStax book, can you sell it back? Okay. If you rented your book, I would not recommend returning it until the end of the semester. So I'd wait till after you take your final exam, because well, if you haven't used it, here's the thing about your book. If you rented a book, I assume you rented a hard copy of the book, because the book is available for free online. So even if you have a hard copy and you want to get rid of your hard copy, you can always go online and look at any of this material that's in the textbook anytime, because it's free to everybody. So yeah, do whatever you want to do with your, if you got a hard copy of the textbook, and then you can always check things online if you find that, oh my goodness, I really want to look at that. Yep. Cool, I hope you get some good money back for your textbook. This is one that you'll always have. It's funny, I have a hard copy too. I like hard copies of things. So I have, this is like the, not a hard copy, but it's a hard, not a hardback, but it's a hard copy. And I also have the hardback, and I really like having the book instead of having to be online all the time. But it also depends on how much you use the book. Some people use the book, and some people really like to read a little bit more. Some people just find it distracting. So it's really up to individuals. Okay, well, If there aren't any more questions, I'm going to think that we did a pretty good job of covering these questions right now, all the way up to the nervous system. And so the nervous system and the reproductive system, those are things that you're going to want to make sure you view those lectures sometime next week, right? Sometime between now and the week that we come back after Thanksgiving. View those lectures, and during that last week of review, we can answer all of these questions, and we'll answer the questions that have to do with conservation biology, which is week 15. Sound good? Okay, let's do this. You guys can do it. I know you can. Seeing a lot of great work out there. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, discouraged, and just plain over it, then I want you to know that you are not alone. A lot of people are feeling that way right now. This is a tough semester for everybody because being fully online is just hard for a lot of people, especially with all the other restrictions and changes to our lives right now. So hang in there, hang in there, hang in there, hang in there. You can do it. You can definitely do it. You've got a few more weeks and then you get a break, at least from this. All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks.
You.
Have a good one. Thank you.